Get me out of Latin America now. Are you all sure? Believe me, after watching this video, you'll want to stay. Let's go. I know there's a risk of being robbed and you might get stressed out with the bad habits of the drivers. But I assure you it's preferable to having to flee your city for fear of it being bombed. Thanks to geography, history, and therefore geopolitics, our region can be considered privileged. Are you interested in knowing why? Go ahead, then stay until the end of the video. In this video, we will get straight to the point, addressing the initial question. As due to news like this, the situation is critical. The world is going to hell, and we are probably closer to a third world war than many expect. Do you remember what was the most unrelated region to the first two seasons? Exactly, and in the third, we would not be the exception. In the old continent, the war in Ukraine is seen as an attempt at an imposed Anschluss. It's not simply a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but it involves all North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries. Feeling backed under the umbrella of the United States, Europe has neglected both its military capacity and its arms production, unlike Russia. However, what truly worries Europeans are the statements of the potential next president of the United States, Donald Trump, who has hinted at the possibility of withdrawing his support. Well, it worries everyone, except the French president, who with heirs of Napoleon Bonaparte has threatened to deploy North Atlantic Treaty Organization troops in Ukraine. If this threat materializes, we could find ourselves in an official conflict between Europe and Russia, along with the allies of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, endangering the ideal of the European dream. Of course, the other latent conflicts in the old continent could be triggered by a domino effect. If you don't like the cold, you might consider heading to the African continent, although I must warn you that it's not a good idea either. In the context of the rivalry between France and Russia, it is relevant to mention recent events in the Sahel. A series of coups have been recorded in several former French colonies. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have established a mutual defense alliance to face the constant threats of military intervention by the Economic Community of West African States. The new military governments in these countries have the backing of Russia, and even mercenaries from the Wagner Group have been deployed in their territory, while Economic Community of West African States receives support from France. This places the theater of operations in the Sahel region, without overlooking that the persistent civil wars in other nations could intensify, fueled by the eagerness of foreign powers to expand their influence on the African continent. Now we turn to the Middle East, where the starting point is easy to anticipate. The war between Israel and Hamas is just the tip of the iceberg of something that can continue to intensify. Although it is the only large-scale war in the region, the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon, both members of the resistance axis led by Iran, are also currently involved in a low-intensity war. Perhaps what may deter Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, and other members of the anti-Zionist axis from launching attacks against Israel is the protection provided by the United States. However, if Russia is involved in a combat front, it may continue to support its major regional ally as a gesture of reciprocity for the use of drones in the war in Ukraine. Amid this distraction, Turkey and Azerbaijan could advance their expansionist aspirations against an Armenia unprotected by both Russia and Iran, seizing the opportunity to take Sangasur. Well, not all the developed world is focused on the West. The Far East could also be considered a good option to move to. Wouldn't you like to live here? Well, I don't think so much to say. With so many distractions from the United States, there is a possibility that the Chinese Communist Party may try to fulfill its promises of reunification with Taiwan, which would mean invading a country that hopes to have the support of the United States. In response, Uncle Sam may choose to activate its already established military bases in Japan and South Korea to counter its main economic rival. However, this carries the risk that the hermit neighbor to the north, North Korea, a nuclear weapons holder, decides to break the ceasefire with Seoul, triggering a new regional war front. And since we mentioned nuclear weapons, their potential use is not limited only to the European front or to Gaza. There are two other little angels who get along very badly, India and Pakistan, who did not ratify the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and possess nuclear weapons. Since the world is going to hell, wouldn't this be a perfect opportunity to claim sovereignty over the Kashmir region once and for all? Well, no way around it. The Asians will have to flee to the southeast, an affordable region with exceptional tourism. We're going on vacation to Angkor Wat. Not so fast. Have you stopped to consider what the other dilemma the Asian giant is facing? It's about feeling restricted in its expansion beyond the South China Sea, a term that some Southeast Asian countries prefer not to use. Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia are not willing to yield to Beijing's pressures to dominate these waters. And guess who they might turn to for help? Exactly, you got it! After all, the United States does not feel isolated in the region, especially after the signing of the Australia, United Kingdom, United States Agreement, in which, along with Australia and the United Kingdom, they join forces to counteract China's influence in the Indo-Pacific. For its part, Beijing has intensified its efforts to establish relationships in some of the small oceanic nations that no one remembers, and they are the Solomon Islands, a country where the Battle of Guadalcanal continued and where China continues to gain influence. Wow, Sebas, the situation looks messed up from all sides. It seems we have no choice but to join the immigrant caravans and head to the United States. Even, does that mean crossing the Rio Grande? Well, if you decide to do it, at least make sure to opt for the eastern coast, as the western one does get hit by North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missiles, perhaps even loaded with a nuclear warhead. After all, Kim Jong-un is crazy, isn't he? So, as you can see, our geographical poetry, separated by two great oceans, along with the fact that almost all of our disputes have been resolved, could keep us quite out of a potential Third World War. However, the worrying thing is that if some sociopath decides to press the nuclear button, we would be talking about a nuclear winter that would cause the collapse of agriculture and threaten to trigger famines. So, our challenge would not be to escape, but to ensure we have enough food in case we find ourselves in the worst of scenarios. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that politicians start to moderate their speeches and look for a way to reconcile their differences before it's too late. Because they would not be the ones to pay the consequences of a potential Third World War. It will be us, the ordinary citizens, who will watch as our cities are destroyed and we are forced to survive in a warlike environment. It seems we have learned nothing from our past experiences, which underscores the importance of understanding our history to comprehend the critical situation we find ourselves in. Do you think a Third World War is about to break out in the medium term? Don't forget to leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Also, I leave in the description my social networks, and in case you want to see the new videos in pre-release and have a greater interaction with me, your donations on Patreon, unamanito.net, or channel members are welcome. See you next time.